Look, when a crazy number of COVID cases over the weekend, over 5,000 new cases, which is a record high to Malaysia. In your opinion, why is this MCO not as effective as the first MCO, and what can we actually do better?
Well, I think people have not been following the SOPs as well as they did way back in March last year. A lot of it is psychological as well. I know people have been desensitized. We've been living with COVID for the longest time. I mean, it's human nature for us to, be a bit desensitized. We shouldn't do. And I guess the difference between this MCO and the last MCO, I mean, the full MCO that was executed in March 2020, was that the government has also admitted that although this is an MCO, they also have to introduce some, loosen some restrictions compared to the one in March last year, because, it's the lives versus livelihood kind of thing. So it was not as strict per se as it was in March. So there's that difference. Plus, people people are a bit sick of COVID. They understand the need for MCO, especially here in Klang Valley. But it's just not the same, because last time there was this COVID just arrived in January, February, and we did MCO in March. So, it was still top of mind back then. Now people are just desensitized. And hence we are seeing some lapses in terms of how people are actually obeying the SOPs, to the point that the government even is mulling a higher penalty, stricter SOPs. So that's why it's just not quite the same this time. But we have to be disciplined. We have to keep discipline. I mean, we've entered uncharted territory. The MCO can be as strict as it can be, but at the end of the day, it's up to us whether we want to actually follow through and be disciplined to follow all the SOPs.
I mean, going back to what you're saying, the IGP has said it's time to increase the compound fine for those that actually violate that. Do you think that increasing the fine will actually put a stop to those flouting the SOPs?
I don't think it'll put a stop to people flouting SOPs, but I think it will definitely help. I think it will definitely help limit disobedience. So I think it's long overdue, in fact. 1,000 ringgit, at least for me, is a lot of money. But apparently for a lot of people, it's not a lot of money. It's worth the risk of, sneaking out to go and cross borders and things like that. I think it's high time, because at the end of the day, we have blasted countless reminders on TV, on radio, PSAs saying that, hey, just follow the SOPs, don't cross state borders, don't cross county borders and things like that. It's time for us to put our foot, I mean, the government, for the government to actually, use the stick and not the carrot anymore. So I believe this will actually be more effective in curbing people's the disobedience of SOPs.
Okay. And lastly on this, what of the fact that these numbers aren't actually really what's happening real time, that they're because of
backlog or something? Yeah.
Well, that's what the MB of Selangor claims. Not many, as far as I know, only Selangor has claimed that. But it does make sense, because I've interviewed few experts. I mean, it just makes sense, because like we have thousands of new cases every day now, at least 1 or 1,500 of net cases, meaning these are new patients when you subtract them with patients who have recovered, for example. So this is pretty overwhelming for hospitals, for the MIPE Center in Serdang, because they have their hands full. They can't really cope with the increasing number of new cases every day. The same goes with testing. We can only test a certain number of people every day. Even now that we have gotten more private hospitals to join in, I still think the figure is probably about 17,000 tests a day or something like that. I could be wrong. So that plus the multiplication of contact tracing. For example, now you have someone who has tested positive, and he was with 5 family members, and then 2 of those test positive, and then those 2 people was with 10 other people. So you have to test more and more and more people. On top of that, people are now going for swab tests even more often. So there's just a multitude of tests coming in, and the labs don't have, the capacity, the manpower to actually produce the results quickly. So there is this backlog, especially in a very packed state like Selangor. So we're seeing, for example, if you get tested on day one, you require maybe 5 or 6 days to get that test. So one of the reasons for the spike is that we are getting some results from maybe a week ago or 7 or 8 days ago. So that's that backlog. But doesn't mean that, because of this backlog, those figures have been inflated. We have entered a very critical juncture. We have breached new ground. So it's up for us to follow all the SOPs with discipline.
Nice.
I like how I can answer longer,
yeah, dude, go,
because you can edit later.
exactly.
You do it live.
It's not like last time,
come on,
I know you're like,
let's go. Come on.
I know you're like 3 minutes. 3 minutes. Okay, gotta do this.
So I know I said I'd follow everything, and that wasn't written down. I just thought
no, but it's a good
relevant.
question,
Yeah.
right? So it's fine.
Yeah. No reason.
When is this for? Tomorrow. Right?
Tomorrow.
Yeah, so it's plenty
second.
of time to water me down.
Actually, no, we have to edit it, then make sure that you are cleared.
Yeah.
It's all about
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
We're golden and untouchable, but you, on the other hand,
Wow.
Because you're Awani.
see if you're a naughty boy. Actually,
No, but
I've never been naughty.
No,
Just
but-
ask JD.
both of
Look
us,
at that. Yeah.
we'll do a break. I'm like, was that safe? Are we gonna go to jail? That's that question.
What are you talking about? I'm not that bad. Come on.
All right. No, but we always go, can we say that? I love that. Like, I wonder how far we can push this. Okay.
okay. Neswana.
Okay, front page.
Okay.
Why is it there? Stupid system. Did I click on something?
Okay.
Sorry,
There was
dude.
yeah.
All right. Front page number 2.
I like how you did it exactly into the microphone.
He's like,
On purpose.
okay,
Yeah.
number 2. Front page.
Okay. Singapore has announced it will temporarily suspend its reciprocal travel bubble arrangement with neighboring Malaysia, as well as South Korea and Germany. And amid the let me start again.
Yep. Go.
Singapore announced it will temporarily suspend its reciprocal travel bubble arrangement with neighboring Malaysia, as well as South Korea and Germany, amid the resurgence of coronavirus cases worldwide and its reported new variants. Now, Singapore's Ministry of Foreign Affairs said on Saturday it will review the arrangements after 3 months. But for now, with this travel bubble suspended, how will this impact Malaysia's? Oh my goodness gracious me!
And do that again.
But for now.
Yeah. Well, for now, yeah.
But for now, with this travel bubble suspended, how will this impact Malaysians working in Singapore but actually living here in Malaysia?
Okay. Can you do it? Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Cool. Okay. Right.
Do I just jump in or what?
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry
hold on.
about making a pig's ass of all of that.
No worries.
Can you hear that?
Yeah.
Okay. Hold on. How does? Okay. Jump in whenever. Go.
Well, I think it goes without saying that it has a huge effect. I think one of the busiest, routes, whether it be aerial or on, the ground route,
Land, right,
is between land route is between Malaysia and Singapore. I'm not sure of the figure, but I'm sure millions or at least hundreds of thousands of Malaysians work in Singapore. A huge number of Singaporeans work in Malaysia as well. Probably not as many as Malaysians working in Singapore. This was supposed to be one of the first, recovery kind of effort, back to normalcy kind of effort. This was in the pipeline. We were supposed to bring the cases down to 2 digits, single digit, as we did sometime middle last year. And thereafter, the immediate priority was to rejuvenate the economy. And when you talk about the rejuvenating the Malaysian economy, Singapore is key. So the inability for Malaysians or Singaporeans, for that matter, to cross borders between our two countries would have a negative effect on both economies, especially Malaysia, because as you know, Malaysians in JB, they rely a lot on income they earn in Singapore. The cost of living in JB is very, very high. but jobs in JB itself sometimes can pay not enough. So a lot of them rely on that. So I've had many friends, who work in Singapore. They're now stranded in Malaysia. They can't go to work, and their employers sometimes are a bit strict as well, because some of them were terminated because they couldn't come to work for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and then for months. This, I'm afraid, would have a compounding effect, because people are already losing their jobs. People are already having their income severely reduced. They are already facing a lot of economic hardships. So for those, especially in Johor Bahru, on the east coast of Malaysia, this is the last thing that they need. They would now also face the possibility of not being able to, go to Singapore to work, possibly lose their jobs. I still hope that the government can, consider some sort of limited, travel bubble kind of thing, maybe a corridor between two countries, because I think it's key. I understand things are not as they were a few months ago. We are facing now the third or the fourth wave. But I just think that this will have a long-term effect that we will see, because a lot of people are now debating that the impact of, collapsed economy would be just as bad as the impact of an uncontrolled pandemic.
So should we, Malaysians, the ones who live in JB, should just, because we don't know when this is actually going to clear up, just forget about working in Singapore for now and then just focus on getting jobs locally?
Yeah, I guess so, because even those who still have jobs in Singapore, right? I've heard of a few. Of course, I don't have the figures, but I have friends who work in Singapore and they go back and forth between JB and Singapore, or between even Kulai and Singapore and things like that. They're just basically losing their jobs, because I kind of understand on part of the employer as well, because sometimes they give leeway. Okay, because of the COVID thing, this is pretty unpredictable. They can accept if you still can't come to work for 1 week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, but if it has been 2 or 3 months, I know, as an employer as well, this is not sustainable for them. I believe some employees have given, some no pay leave, or laid off employees. Laid off meaning they've not terminated the employees, but still they're just not paying the salary, and they can return to work. They can take that employee again whenever conditions permit. But it's still hard for both sides. I mean, for employers also, it's hard for them to actually continue paying Malaysian employees salaries if they just can't come to work for months on end. So the government has to look into this further. The government has done a lot of things within their capabilities to give cash aid and things like that. But I really, really do hope that at least with Singapore, they will look at some sort of, alternative to try and achieve the best win-win situation possible given the current circumstances.
Because it affects me as well, man. I want to go home.
I know. I was so close to saying that, but then back in my head is like, you're one of the very well endowed ones. So
don't say that. He's gonna be walking around thrusting his crotch out, going, "Look, man, said I'm well endowed."
Really, you're known for walking around the office and thrusting your crotch around. Quite an image you have, man.
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
We call it the duck walk.
Yeah. It's
walk.
felt all the way from here in
to the third floor.
No, from here all the way to Awani offices. Oh my god.
Please don't.
That's JD's.
You can come, yeah.
Oh!
You can come, but you don't have to thrust your crotch.
Oh god.
You do that here because you can't do that in Singapore, right? Always Singaporeans always do things that they can't do in
Yeah,
Singapore.
exactly. Yeah.
Here,
They're very dirty fellas, I tell you.
Can.
And
then they'll like roll down the windows. Buang the sampah on the street.
Yes.
Hey, but the sampah is it's worth 3 times more than our sampah here. That's what I know that. Is that McDonald's? But this McDonald's was expensive, you know, expensive McDonald's.
Gaya
right.
Dan sampah.
Yeah.
Right.
Number 2, done.
We haven't done this show in such a long time, man. I have that plus me not being able to think properly, so just bear with me today, lah.
We're good, dude. We're fine. We're also trying to feel our way through
You
this as well.
think much more properly than I will ever hope to think. So I don't know why you're worrying about that.
All right, let's talk about condo management.
I just look smart, yeah. Not really that smart. Anyway, okay.
Okay.
Front page number 3.
So Dato Sri Ismail Sabri claimed that the condo managements have a right to bar residents if they don't comply with the COVID swab test. Experts in property claim that they have no right to bar an owner and or resident from their homes, as there is no provision for this in the Strata Management Act. So it's all a bit confusing and a bit stressful as well.
Yeah.
So can a condo owner or resident be barred from entering their own property?
It is confusing, right? COVID has given us many firsts. It is really unprecedented indeed, and it continues to surprise every day. Even all aspects of life, such as this now you're talking about, Asha. We are entering, new ground, something that we've never encountered before, and we are asking ourselves, can we do this? Well, I'm no lawyer, but legally, as if you mentioned just now, I don't think there's any legal grounds per se. This is if you're referring to the Strata Act and all the traditional acts with regards to home ownership. So that's one. But the law is quite flexible as well. It is open to interpretation. Me personally, I want to go ahead and say I support what Ismail Sabri said. Yeah,
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, explain.
Why?
People, probably would be mad at me. I do think it's there has to be some refinements though. For example, I do not support a blanket rule as such to be imposed everywhere in the country, but let's say if you're in a very critical zone, a red zone, a building, a condo which has seen a case or a few cases not long ago. So I think it makes sense for the management of the condominium to take leadership and take matters seriously, and impose higher conditions for people to meet, swab tests and things like that. Like my apartment, we have all kinds of little things. We even have daily sanitization. They even took the initiative to actually put toothpicks in the lift so that whenever you go into the lift, you don't need to press the button with your actual fingers.
Okay.
You take the toothpick and then you press. I know it's a bit silly, right? But it's great,
You do what you have to do, right?
Yeah.
Right. So, but the thing is that I guess the question comes in when, if you're positive, like a friend of mine is positive, but not so ill, touch wood, that they need the hospital. So therefore not taking up a hospital bed. If they're locked out of their homes, how are they supposed to go back and quarantine at home?
Quarantine,
if they're kept out because they're positive?
That's a good point. Like I said, I don't think there should be a blanket rule, for example, because Ismail Sabri, Dato' Sri Ismail Sabri also did not really go into detail. I give you that. But the version that I probably would like to see is that it should be on a case-to-case basis, for example. I have a friend who tested positive as well. And last I checked, he never got admitted into MIPS because MIPS just couldn't take him anymore. And it was not such a serious case like your friend, Asha. So what happens then? The logical thing to do is to get the patient quarantined in his or her home. So in that circumstance, I would expect for that, I would accept for that person to be able to have access, of course, to his or her own home. But we have to see it on a case-to-case basis because, for example, if there are people in that house, especially high-risk people, older people, kids, and things like that, who has not tested positive, there has to be some controls as to how you approach it, so you can limit the damage. For now, yes, people in the same house can remain in the same house, and usually when one tests positive, the others will test positive as well. Usually, so there's still a way for us to refine this. I'm not saying that I have all the answers. I don't. But I am not keen to straight away jump into what the minister said and say, no, this is silly. I do see the logic of it, but there still is a lot of work to be done to refine it for it to be effective.
You don't do it?
I don't really understand it. The second question.
Hmm?
Maybe I'm just being
Okay.
stupid.
No, it's about rules during the emergency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he also mentioned about the swab test, right? Look, he makes like announcements every single day. Now I'm confused really, but I believe he did that as well, right?
Yeah. So
The condo management thing.
the question is not right now, dude. Because it's not in the Strata Management Act. This one about you're not allowed to go home and everything. Because we're in emergency times right now, can the rules be changed? Do they have different powers to make different rules?
Look, as far as I know, the Strata Act doesn't provide for it, as you mentioned, but we have provisions in the emergency ordinance that, for example, allows the government to temporarily take over buildings and facilities if they deem it fit as part of the effort to combat COVID-19. Now, I'm no lawyer. I don't know the specifics of this, but what I know is that a few days ago, one of the ministers, actually the minister in the Prime Minister's Department for Legal and Parliamentary Matters, actually said this. He said the government can take over if it sees fit. So I don't know how this fits into this story. I don't know. I'm not saying the government will take over your apartment or your apartment's management. Don't worry about that. But I this is my this is my unprofessional, like I'm not a lawyer kind of thing, an unprofessional view, but I think there is a possibility if things get pretty serious in one specific location, such as an apartment, the government can probably take advanced measures to curb the spread of COVID-19, as we've seen in some,
which they have done already, haven't they?
Yeah,
they've already done that. So
yeah, like PKPD, like the highest form of MCO. So they've enforced that on a lot of apartments over the past few months. So something like that can happen.
Cool.
So confusing.
Emergency, anything can happen, dude.
Yeah, man.
Emergency is different, dude.
It's like free reign, bro.
Yeah, that's right. Because I spoke to a lawyer.
Not Kate Blanchett, but Carte Blanchett.
Yeah. Carte Blanchett. It's when everything is white.
Itu actress punya.
It's white.
Carte Blanchett.
This is number 3.
Yeah.
Condo, yeah.
Condo. Baby condo.
I'll take over condo. Tell me condo.
I used to be one of those people who really, we're not live, right? We are recording.
Okay. Zoom. Front page. Record. Front page number 4.
Luqman, see in the case of the 7-year-old boy that I can't read. Hold on. Okay. A 7-year-old boy died in Taman Krobong Jaya here yesterday after he was believed to have been abused by his mother and stepfather, aged 32 and 38, have been detained. The boy is believed to have been taken back by his biological mother after he was raised by a foster family for 6 years. This is actually one of the saddest news articles that we've come across for over the week. For a 7-year-old to lose his life, and for a foster family to lose the child that they actually cared about and treated as their own, treated correctly. In your opinion, how could this have been avoided?
I don't know. In hindsight, it's easy for us to say, right, Asha, but the boy had been with the foster family for 6 years. And the biological parents of the boy had a right to reclaim him, for lack of a better term. In fact,
is that because there was the sentence of, if he was taken away because of the abuse in the first place, where was the rights that came into that after a stipulated amount of time he could go back? Was that?
Well, I don't believe the abuse was really brought up in the early stages, because we actually interviewed the foster mom. She just mentioned that, after a few years, the parents somehow, for some reason, decided to take the boy back, which they had to give in to. So it's easy for us to actually look back in hindsight and say we could have done this better, we could have done that better. Sure, but if you want to, I put myself in the shoes of the foster mom. Look, I've spent 6 years taking care of this kid as if he was my own. I've taken care of this kid since he was in the crib, up until he was 6. And once he was taken back by his biological parents, then there was a bit of claims of the boy not being treated well, etc. I guess one thing in hindsight that we could have foreseen better was the ability for kids really to actually reach out to someone if they are in such circumstances. We've been debating about, talian kasih and things like that. The government has put in, at least one avenue of communication for people who face torture or I don't mean torture, I face abuse rather. But it's hard for a 6-year-old or maybe a 5 or 4, even an 8-year-old to actually contact talian kasih or talian this and talian that, when he or she, say, is alone with a set of abusive parents.
Absolutely, yeah.
I'm not sure whether that was the case in this boy's predicament. We have to wait for the for the investigations to come through. But something has to be thought out.
So what
a lot of lives still to be saved.
So what kind of amendments do you think our Child Protection Act needs to have to, or systems in place to ensure that the children here in Malaysia are protected?
Well, to be honest with you, I don't think the act needs so much more work. I haven't looked at it from A to Z, I admit, but the penalties I think are sufficient, etc. So in terms of the act, the framework is there, but rather the monitoring, the execution of it, the process. Once, let's say, the perpetrator is caught and he or she is put to court, then the act is there, and I think personally it's sufficient. But until you get to that process, or even if you get to the process of catching a perpetrator, usually the damage is already done. So the focus should be on avoiding, not curing. Prevention is better than cure, especially when lives are at stake, such young, tender lives. Like I mentioned, for example, it's still pretty challenging and pretty hard for a child. If I'm a child and I'm alone in an abusive household, I'm say 6 or 7 or 5, something like that, and I've got 30-something parents in the house with me. Probably we live in an apartment not so big. I get abused every now and then, or maybe frequently. How do I reach out to people? How do I reach out to people without endangering myself even further? So this is what the government has to look into.
Well, hopefully that will be happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the details of the case also is a bit vague when I read it.
Yeah, no, because it's still under investigation. Still
And
very
also,
early stages.
I'll hold my peace.
Just say lah.
No.
Seriously, just say lah.
Want me to pause it?
Pause. Come on.
No, I just think that
Hey!
I was.
Are we ready and clucking?
We are.
Okay, cool.
I'm clucking ready.
All right, cool.
Okay.
Front page, number 5.
2,000 chickens died after long delays at the Tuas checkpoint while they were being transported from Malaysia to Singapore. For the longest time, there has been calls for another bridge connecting Malaysia and Singapore due to the congestion. In your opinion, is it the right time to revisit this plan?
Well, the short answer is actually no, because as you know, we've got a ton of other things on our plate right now. This has been years actually in debate, the second bridge and things like that with the Singapore and Malaysia relationship. Well, I just don't think it's a priority right now. I understand some of the concerns of some people, especially now with COVID. They have got to get their businesses going. We talked about Malaysians working in Singapore and vice versa. We also have businesses having to make the very frequent commute from Malaysia to Singapore, one of the busiest, routes anywhere in the world, actually. so ideally we would like to have it, yes, for commerce, to avoid unnecessary losses like this. 2,000 chickens sounds like a lot. I'm sure it's worth a lot. I'm sure you can feed a lot of people. So yeah, the thing is, this is one of the ideal case kind of things that we have to pursue, but I don't think it's now, Asha.
Right, when we're out of the woods, perhaps.
Because right now, I think it was also because of the traffic was pre-COVID times, but also now they're doing so many new tests that caused the congestion as well, right?
No, that's actually, that's actually true. No, there's a lot of claims saying that the infrastructure between Malaysia and Singapore are not really current anymore. It takes into consideration traffic volume from I don't know how many years ago. So things have changed now. I went to Singapore probably a year and a half ago. Wow, traveling. I still remember how it feels like.
Sounds so odd, doesn't it? I went to Singapore over a year ago. What? Normally it's like last weekend for JD. Yeah.
You get stuck at the CIQ for hours,
Yeah.
Correct,
So obviously some upgrades have to be made. I mean, JD, you go back and forth all the time last time, right? You might. I hear you have a helicopter, right? Just kidding.
No, I wasn't the guy that was arguing about where to park my helicopter.
Well, I suppose the other thing to think of is, in this case with the 2,000 chickens, maybe if there weren't so many chickens packed together in one transport, with some ventilation, that might not have happened. So there's a lot of factors, as you say.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. And look, I'm not a poultry expert, but I have heard of a large number of animals being transported, especially smaller animals like chicken. I do think there's a way to do it properly. I do think there are vehicles and SOPs in place to carry something like 2,000 chickens with proper ventilation and all. I'm not too sure whether that was one of the factors. It might have been. But I think the bigger picture here is, for us to get it from point A to point B, it's not just a chicken. We've had a few instances, can't really remember on top of my head now, where things like perishables have actually, perished within Singapore and Malaysia because of the congestions and things like that. So it's something that we definitely have to look into once we are out of the woods, like you said, Asha.
Yeah.
So once you sort out this COVID issue, then we fix the travel between JB and Singapore, and then hopefully we'll revitalize the HSR.
Yes, we can.
Or the problem might actually solve itself. Who knows?
You're just thinking about yourself.
That's true. I want to go home.
So you can go on it. You get the season pass for the HSR or something, right?
And on that note, thanks so much.
Luqman, thanks, buddy.
Thank you.